Terroir is a sense of place as conveyed through the taste of wine. The terroir is a concept that encompasses the varieties of grapes, elevation and shape of the vineyard, type and chemistry of soil, climate and seasonal conditions, and local yeast cultures. Each country, each region, each season, each vineyard. A combination of earth, chemistry, and God's goodness produces the richness of each bottle. Each vineyard, each vintage has its own terroir. Each bottle tells a story. So Pinot Noir has hit the American market pretty hard within the past decade or so. And I think it's funny because Pinot Noir has been around for centuries. Some of the most expensive, most sought after wines in the world are made from Pinot Noir, coming from the Burgundy region, mostly from Domaine de la Romanée-Conti, which is where some of the most prized Pinot Noirs in the world come from. But the style, it's so light and refreshing, and you get a lot of strawberry and raspberry flavors from them. They could be bold, they could be light, they could be elegant, they can sometimes they could be made in a bigger style. It's been around for a long time. A lot of people look at it as a gateway wine for people that like to drink white wine and want to move on to red wine. They usually start them off at Pinot Noir because it is a lot lighter. It's not as big and bold as a Cabernet or Merlot or a Malbec can be. Pinot Noir, it's just something about it that's just so elegant, especially when you get them from Burgundy. There's a lot of earth to them. There's not as much tannin. They're just really easy to drink. For centuries, these vineyards in Burgundy have been putting out some of the best wines ever to be known by man. One of the reasons why Pinot Noir doesn't have as much tannin is because it's a very thin-skinned grape. Usually your thicker skinned grapes will contain more tannin, but it also depends on how the winemaker decides to make the wine. A lot of the times when they put all of the berries into a vat, they naturally just start to, gravity just, the weight just starts to press these grapes and all the free run juice comes to the bottom. So they don't have much skin contact. So they are a lot softer and you're not going to get a lot of tannin for them. Therefore, when people talk about how silky a wine is, a lot of that can be from the wine not having a lot of contact with the skins while fermentation is occurring, and also if they don't press them that hard. If you ever get a Concord grape from your fridge and you put it in your mouth and you start to chew on it, you ever notice like the harder you chew on it, like the more astringent it becomes? You can feel the film on your teeth, and that's all tannin. And tannin can also come from the grape stems. Sometimes people do whole cluster fermentation. Sometimes they hand pick all of the grapes off of the stems. Sometimes they're removed by a machine. But it really depends on what the style that the winemaker wants. Sometimes the winemaker wants a tannic style, so they will do whole cluster fermentation. They will press a little bit harder. Once again, it just depends on the style. Also, and a lot of people don't know this, but you can get tannin from oak. And the way you do that is when they have newer oak barrels, you figure, just think of a new piece of furniture and you kind of rub the top of it. It's going to kind of have that rough, coarse feel. Then over the course of about 10 years, 5 years, it tends to get a lot smoother. Well, those oak tannins, they can come from the inside of the barrels when maturing these wines. So serving temperature for Pinot Noir, normally you're going to want it a little bit colder than most of your wines. Just think of it this way. The more body, the more color that a wine has, the warmer you're going to want to serve it. Now, when I say warm, I don't mean like room temperature warm. Typically, Pinot Noir, you're going to want to keep about 50 to 55 degrees. It tends to drink a little bit better, has a better mouthfeel to it. And just, it is a lighter style wine. They do tend to have less tannin, just like white wine. White wine virtually almost has no tannin. You're going to want to drink your Pinot Noirs almost the same way. Now, you can drink them at room temperature if you like, if you feel that's best for you. Typically, try drinking a Pinot Noir that is at room temperature, and then try drinking a Pinot Noir that is at cellar temperature, and see the difference for yourself on the flavor profiles and how you can pick up a lot more. Not only that, when you serve wine at room temperature, the alcohol tends to stand out a lot more, so it can mask a lot of those beautiful flavors that you really like to enjoy from Pinot Noirs. A little insight as far as wines or Pinot Noirs from California, Pinot Noirs from Oregon, and Pinots from France. A lot of people ask why a bottle of Pinot can cost so much, or why does Oregon Pinot cost so much? Why am I paying $80 for a good bottle? And now, there are some really good Oregon Pinots out there that are under $30. California, a lot of people say, well, how come California Pinots are $10 and $15? California, they really like to blend their wines a lot. A lot of the Pinots that you find coming from the California market are usually blended with Syrah. They're blended with other grape varieties. Oregon typically keeps their Pinot Noirs at 100% Pinot. You have to look at if the grapes are hand-picked. You got to look at how the wine is made, the type of oak barrels that they're using, if they're not using oak barrels. A lot of people like to say that Willamette, which is in Oregon, that they like to follow the Burgundy style, which I think is funny because, when people say Burgundy style, I kind of disagree because Burgundy has so many different styles. I mean, you have oaked, you have unoaked, you have wines that have been aged longer in bottle before they're released. Burgundy just has a broad spectrum of different styles as far as like white wines or red wines go. So when people say Burgundy in style, I wonder if they're referring to the higher acidity, or maybe the lightness, or maybe because they use 100% Pinot Noir, that variety. I wonder what it is that they're trying to get at when they say that. But anyway, Pinot Noir that comes from Oregon typically is made from 100% Pinot Noir. California, on the other hand, they kind of manipulate the wine a little bit more to kind of gear it towards that flavor. I don't want to throw any wine names out there, but there are some wines that are perform very strongly on the American market that, are completely not like Pinots. You look at the color, the taste, and they're not really Pinots at all, as far as I'm concerned. Then you go to Burgundy in France, these Pinots are extremely expensive. A lot of it has to do with just how long the wineries have been around that they produce, and they're just excellent wines. I've had some Pinot Noirs that are pushing $80 to $100 a bottle, and I just was completely unimpressed. When selecting a bottle of Pinot Noir, here's some guidelines that you're going to want to use. One, don't think that the more you spend on a bottle of Pinot, the better it's going to be. Typically, that's incorrect. I've seen a lot of people purchase wines just based on price alone and be kind of disappointed. And I've had people say, wow, I drink this bottle of Pinot Noir and it's like $20 a bottle. It's absolutely fantastic. And, it is. And they didn't have to splurge and spend the $80 to $100 a bottle to get a really good bottle of wine. Second, there's a lot of different styles with Pinot Noir. So whatever suits you best, buy that wine. Don't buy it because, some magazine gave it a 92 rating or a 95 rating, or because your neighbor said that this is the best Pinot Noir. There's so many different styles. To them, that probably is the best Pinot Noir. Maybe your style, you want a little bit more fruit to it. Some people like a little bit more earth, which is the cool thing with Pinot Noir, because they could go from one end of that spectrum to another. Some Pinots can be extremely dry and earthy, and you can actually put your nose in the glass and smell dirt and rocks and smells like you're on a farm kind of. And then you'll get other Pinots where that fruit is just so fresh and vibrant and smells like fresh picked strawberries and raspberries and plums. And then you'll get other Pinots that are very floral, where you'll smell violets and dried rose petals and dandelions. So it's really cool to kind of do your own research and find out what Pinot Noir or even what bottle of wine suits you best. As far as selecting Pinot Noirs, another thing to go by is where the grapes are grown. I know for a fact I absolutely love Pinot Noirs from Santa Barbara County in California. I love Pinots from Santa Maria Valley. I love Pinots from Santa Lucia Highlands. Those, whenever I see a bottle of wine, I don't even pay attention to the producer or the vintage or the price. If I see a bottle of wine and it has Santa Barbara County on it, or if it says, like a certain area or a certain producer from Willamette or a certain area from Burgundy, then I gravitate towards that wine immediately. And I already assume that it's going to be a pretty good. Of course, the winemaker will make it in the winemaker's style, but typically if I find a bottle of wine from the area that I like to drink the wine, I'll buy it. Doing your own research, let's say you like to buy wine, Pinot Noirs from Russian River, or you like to buy Pinot Noirs from a certain little area in Burgundy, absolutely stick to those wines. Stick to what you know and what you've experienced that you like. Pairing Pinot Noir with food. A lot of people think that this can be really easy. Some people find it kind of difficult because of how light it is. Just because it's a red wine doesn't mean that it's automatically going to go with a steak. Pinot Noir likes more approachable foods. I'll use really light cheeses. Salmon is an excellent pairing with Pinot Noir. Even bolder flavored fish like amberjack or swordfish go extremely well with Pinot Noirs. Also, any kind of light breads, anything with a light sauce in it. I love Pinot Noir with spaghetti. Absolutely love it. I think, because of the richness from the pasta and the texture, and in combination with the red sauce and even a little bit of meat, it's a beautiful pairing. In Pinot Noir, the acid levels can be higher. A lot of the time, they are higher in acid, and that's why they do tend to go really well with food, because when you drink a Pinot and they're higher in acid, you tend to salivate. When you salivate, get your mouth ready for dinner. It also kind of gets you ready for that next bite when you're in the middle of eating your meal. Now, ageability with Pinot Noirs, typically wines from Burgundy will age longer than American Pinot Noirs, simply because the acid content in the grapes in Burgundy are a lot higher, because France is obviously has a cooler climate than the United States. Should you drink older Pinots? Do you have to drink older Pinots? Do they taste better when they're older? Some do. I'd say about 90% of the wines that are on the market today should be consumed within the first 2 or 3 years. There are Burgundies out there, and there are even some American Pinots and Oregon Pinots that you can age for quite a while, and they will be more impressive as time goes. Once again, if it's a style that you like, then that's the style you should stick to. Older doesn't necessarily mean better. Now, for some of these higher end Pinot Noirs, especially from Burgundy and even now Germany, it does them a lot of justice. A very common question that I get is, where else other than California, Oregon, and Burgundy can I get Pinot Noir? Well, places like Germany are doing really well. And a lot of people don't know this, but Germany is really up and coming in the Pinot Noir market. There are some Pinots that are coming from some of the more northern regions in Germany that are just performing extremely well, and they taste wonderful, and they are higher in acid. And in Germany, they call it Spätburgunder. If you ever hear somebody talking about a Spätburgunder, then they're talking about Pinot Noir that comes from Germany. And New Zealand. Buy a bottle of Pinot Noir from New Zealand. They are doing some fantastic wines. Australia is starting to do some plantings with Pinot. That's kind of up in the air to see, where they're going with it. Places like Chile and Argentina are starting to hit the market a little bit more with the Pinot Noir grape. You might want to look into those. Italy, they have some really good Pinot Noirs coming out of Tuscany, which is out of the Pomino area, and they actually call it Pinot Nero. Another really cool thing about Pinot Noir is that it makes excellent sparkling wine, and it has for centuries. You look at Champagne, France, where Pinot Noir is used to make some of the best champagnes that come out of France, and they use it in Cremant production, which is also sparkling wine that's from France that isn't from the Champagne region, so they have to call it Cremant. Also from California and from Oregon. When you press these grapes, all the juice that comes out, the only way that it gets its color is from skin contact. When the juice is pressed out, it's all white, but then when they let it sit in contact with the skins, that's where it's going to get its color from. And that's why Pinot Noir is so light, is because the Pinot Noir grape has really thin skin, so therefore it doesn't extract a lot of color. When they press these grapes, and if they make a rosé, sometimes they'll let it sit in contact with the skins to get the color, and sometimes they'll add a little bit of red wine in to add the color, to make it to have that blush pink color to the sparkling wine. There are many excellent sparkling wines out there made from the Pinot Noir grape, and a lot of the times they will blend them with Chardonnay, they'll blend them with Pinot Meunier, they'll blend them with Pinot Blanc. Some of the best, just famous champagnes that are out there, or sparkling wines on the market, are made from the Pinot Noir grape. Recently, I've been introduced to white Pinot Noir, which is pretty interesting. And I don't know if you've seen any white Pinot Noir on the market, but I kind of have mixed feelings, because I've had some that were really good, and then I've had some that just kind of fell short a little bit. I think the acid levels were a little bit too high, and not enough fruit was there, but some of the white Pinot Noirs that I tried were pretty amazing. So keep your eye out for white Pinot Noir. You're going to start to see a lot more winemakers kind of play around with this style. They're actually pretty delicious. They can kind of come across a little bit as a Pinot Grigio, but much, much better. So definitely keep your eye out for white Pinot Noir coming from Oregon particularly, and I think California may play around with it a little bit too. As far as glassware goes on drinking your Pinot Noirs, you can pretty much use any glass, but if you really, really want these flavors and aromas to shine, I would use a glass that has a pretty large bulb, something that kind of comes around at the bottom and then comes a little bit closer at the top. Pinots can be very aromatic, and it's really, really nice to pick up a lot of those scents. Like I touched on earlier about the rose petals and strawberry and raspberries, and sometimes they can have that real earthy smell. Mushrooms can be another aroma that you get from these wines. So anything with a really wide bulb at the bottom. I wouldn't use anything too small. Now you can, by all means, drink Pinot Noir out of any glass. You could drink it out of a coffee mug if it makes you more comfortable, but not that I really recommend it, because you're kind of losing, you're kind of shorting yourself on a lot of these wonderful things that Pinot Noir can bring forward. So anything with a large bulb that kind of closes at the top, I think it's pretty cool, because in my experience with white Pinot Noir versus red Pinot Noir can have those cranberry, raspberry, strawberry flavors and aromas to the wine. But in drinking white Pinot Noir, I kind of found more pear and red apple, yellow apple, a little bit of peach. But it's funny how there's a significant difference between the two when you put them side by side and drink them. I get the question a lot about Burgundy versus the United States as far as Pinot Noir production goes. A lot of people seem intimidated by the actual labels and not being able to find a good Pinot Noir because they know nothing about it. The internet is always a great, useful tool. I know Louis Jadot, being a very good producer coming out of France, you can find some excellent wines. Learn about the labels, because the French, they don't make it easy to buy Pinot Noir, especially good Pinot Noir. It has a lot to do with the name of the village on the front of the label, or the region that the wine comes from, or if it's a Premier Cru or a Grand Cru, or, and I know I kind of seem like I'm speaking a different language when I start talking about these things, but just educate yourself. And once again, you don't have to buy it on price, and you don't have to buy it on wine scores. Reading about it, taking 30 minutes, an hour out of your day and reading about Pinot Noir, and maybe even attending some wine tastings is always a really, really good way to learn about it. Once you start to understand the wine labels a little bit more, you're going to find some really good wines out there from France that are absolutely amazing. The way I always look at it, France has been growing Pinot Noir for centuries. They can't go wrong. They've just been doing such a good job with it, and they've perfected their craft. Now, if you are in a restaurant and you order a glass of Pinot Noir, or any wine at that matter, and you don't feel that it's at the temperature that you like to drink your wines, it is appropriate to ask the server to either chill it down or to make the wine warmer and bring it to your liking. Don't feel that you have to drink the wine at the temperature that the restaurant serves it at. Now, most restaurants are getting really good at keeping their wine in temperature controlled rooms to where the wine's going to come out at cellar temperature. If you feel that your wine is too warm, please say something to the server, and I'm sure that they can accommodate your needs to the way that you want to drink your wine.